free, or text us on 0491 064 669 and we will make your question the question of the day. But we have a question that has come through. Hard one today, Lawson.
Yeah. This is one that I don't really know much about.
I was going to say, I'm going to ask, I'll give you to answer this one.
Awesome. Okay, so the question of the day is, what is Urim and Thummim?
Okay, so we do get some obscure questions here at times, and this is definitely obscure.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of you as our listeners have not heard of the Urim and the Thummim. Okay, the Urim and the Thummim were two stones. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. The high priest had very special clothes that were different from all of the other priests. A part of those clothes was a breastplate. Mm-hmm. Now, on that breastplate, there were 12 stones, one symbolizing each of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, okay. Then on the right and on the left, you had two more stones. One of them was called the Urim, or the light, and the other one was called the Thummim, or the curses. So the light or the curses. This is the two options that you have between these two stones. And these two stones were an integral part of the theocracy. So this was a theocracy, it was government by God.
Okay.
And it was one of the ways, because when you have government by God, you obviously have to have a direct means of communication from God to his nation. And it was one of the ways that God would communicate. Let me give you an example of this. If you go to Numbers chapter 27, this is a story of Joshua. Okay, so Joshua became the leader of God's people after Moses, and of course the great general who conquered the promised land. If we go down to verse 21, well, let's start in verse 20. You shall put some of your honor upon him, and all the congregation and the children of Israel may be obedient. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest. He shall ask counsel for him. That's the priest will ask counsel for him, Joshua, after the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. Okay, so Joshua is to stand before the priest and ask judgment of the Lord from the Urim. Mm-hmm. At his word shall they go out, and at his word shall they come in, both he and all the children of Israel, even with all the congregation. Now, when it talks about, the people going out and coming in at his word, and he is giving his word based on the Urim and the Thummim, this is actually a reference of going out to war or coming back from war. Mm-hmm. One of the questions that we often get asked is, the Bible says thou shalt not kill, and yet God would send his people to war. This is a very simple answer. It's probably for another question for a day, but another day. God is the only one who has the right to choose when a person dies and when a person lives. Mm-hmm. We don't get to make that choice. And if God makes that choice, then it is God doing the killing through, God kills in many different ways, but he is the one who has the right to make that choice. We never can. We don't have time there. Okay, so the Urim and the Thummim was a very important part of the theocracy. It was a way that God communicated with his people. If we go over to 1 Samuel chapter 28, 1 Samuel chapter 28, we have another reference to it over here. This is the story of Saul and the witch of Endor. And of course, he was about to go into battle. And if we go down to verse 6, 1 Samuel 28 and where did verse 6 go? Here it is. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophets. Mm-hmm. And so this is how God would communicate with his people. And at this particular time, Saul panicked in a very large way. Very simply, it worked like this. If there was a positive answer, the Urim would have a halo of light.
Wow.
If there was a negative answer, the Thummim would have a cloudy color to it. And so these stones would change color. This was how God would communicate with his people and be able to give them instruction, particularly, in relationship to warfare, in relationship to judgment, all these kinds of issues. So there's something new for you, Lawson.
Well, there you go.
Today, the Urim and the Thummim.
Dude, stoked. That I can add that to my pile of Bible knowledge that I have amassed of working for the last 1.5 years. But dude, awesome. I love it.
And so essentially God had three ways that he would communicate directly. There's a few other ones as well, like the fleece and so forth. But you had the Urim and the Thummim. You had the prophet, or the local prophet, who was usually one of them alive at a given point of time. And God could communicate directly to the king by dreams and visions and so forth. Anyway, we need to move on with the show today, and we are going to listen to vocal union.